Death by elephant. It sounds like a bizarre and horrific way to go, and it may sound absurd, but death by elephant, also known in India as Gunga Rao, was actually a popular method of execution in Africa and Asia during the Middle Ages. Elephants are easily domesticated and extremely intelligent. Research has shown that they have extraordinary memories, can use objects as tools, and even recognize their own reflections. Human beings, despite also being quite intelligent, are at times extremely cruel, especially in finding new ways of killing other human beings when it comes to capital punishment. Then it seems the one common theme is brutality, and the only differences are the methods used because of location and cultural differences. Let's travel back in time to take a look at this monstrous topic and the role that elephants played in both war and punishment during the Middle Ages. Elephant crushing aside, life was simpler back in the medieval period. Although you might get struck down by a tooth infection, at least you didn't have to worry about accidentally drunk dialing your ex or finding out that your phone number, address, and other personal data was being sold to people to make a profit out of you. Life is more complicated, but it doesn't need to be. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Aura, for helping make our lives that bit easier by providing an all-in-one service to help keep you safe online. If you've ever been bored and tried Googling yourself, you might have seen your personal information on a public site being sold by data brokers. We don't all have the time to track down every time that happens, but Aura can help by sending requests to make the brokers remove your information. For one affordable price, Aura offers parental controls, password management, data protection, and more. It's made my life so much easier as I don't have to worry about scammers getting hold of my details or those annoying robotic calls. You can try out yourself for 2 weeks by using my link aura.com/medievalmadness or by clicking the link in the description. And now for today's video, welcome to Medieval Madness. Majestic beasts. Humans have used elephants to achieve some extraordinary feats, such as the invasion of Italy by General Hannibal when he crossed the Alps using African war elephants, or the building of the temple complex of the legendary Angkor Wat in Cambodia during the 12th century. The word mahout is used to describe anyone who either kept, rode, or trained an elephant. Using a tool known as an elephant goad and metal chains, the mahout first got the animal used to being led before it was taught how to raise a leg and help the rider climb on. Then they were taught to run around obstacles and move together as a pack. Eventually they were trained to charge at enemies and trample them to death. Usually the punishment of death by elephant was reserved for enemy soldiers, which sounds barbaric but isn't really surprising. The Middle Ages were violent times with many wars, and thousands of soldiers across several continents were killed in horrific ways. Dying on the battlefield was always going to be a possibility, but it wasn't long before elephants were also exploited and trained to torture and execute prisoners such as rebels, tax evaders, and even petty thieves. In the mid-10th century, al-Masudi, the Arab historian and traveller, wrote that, quote, "The elephant was an appropriate choice because of its size, strength, intelligence, utility, longevity, dignity, and ability, and its refusal to accept base people as its masters." The Moroccan explorer Ibn Battuta noted that the elephants which he saw at the court of Delhi in the 1330s were trained to make obedience to the sultan and incline their heads, and when they did so the chamberlains cry in a loud voice, "Bismillah." In Nineveh, each elephant walked to within 50 paces of the ruler before kneeling, placing its trunk on the ground and bowing its head 3 times. It was noted that everything was carefully staged to show the authority of the emperor over such huge and formidable animals. It was a great way to show off his absolute power over all things, even beasts. Several of the Western imperial dominions, including the Byzantine and Timurid empires, used elephants as an animal of state to display pomp and majesty and for executions. In the Iranian Empire of Sassanid, the last Sasanian king, Khosrau II, followed the Zoroastrian religion and was not satisfied with the 3,000 wives and 12,000 female slaves that he already had in his harem. So he demanded the hand in marriage of the daughter of Nu'aman, the last king of the Arabian kingdom of Lakhmud. But being a Christian, Nu'aman refused and was executed by being trampled to death by an elephant for his defiance. In Mesopotamia, which is now modern-day Iraq, the 12th century German Jewish writer and traveller Rabbi Pataki of Rezenburg recorded his visit to the ancient city of Nineveh, where the elephants first tossed any prisoner up into the air before killing them. The rabbi wrote, quote, "There was an elephant, its head is not protruding. It is big, eats about 2 wagon loads of straw at once, its mouth is in its breast, and when it wants to eat it protrudes its lip about 2 cubits, takes up the straw with it and puts it into its mouth. When the Sultan condemns anyone to death, they say to the elephant, "This person is guilty." It then seizes with its lip, casts him aloft, and slays him. A show of strength. The early medieval Gupta Empire used war elephants extensively and was able to greatly expand their territories during the reign of the second emperor Samudragupta. Squads that included 1 chariot, 1 elephant, 5 foot soldiers and 3 armed cavalrymen were sent out to protect Gupta villages from raids, but were recalled in times of war to join together. The result was a powerful royal army. The officer in charge of the elephants was known as a Mahapilapati. Coins celebrating the part that elephants played in the empire's success were struck by Gupta emperors such as Kumaragupta I. One of these coins depicts an elephant rider with the legend Kumaragupta, who has destroyed his enemies, is victorious over his foes. Elephants were trained not just to crush but also to slice prisoners into pieces. Validating a ruler's power by making a public spectacle of the execution was always the goal when putting on a show. During the time of the Mughal Empire, the elephants had pointed blades fitted to their tusks. In Thailand and Vietnam, this type of punishment went on well into the 19th century. In the 1330s, the explorer Ibn Battuta had reached the city of Cambaya on the Indian coast. He recorded that, quote, "Upon a certain day when I myself was present, some men were brought out who had been accused of having attempted the life of the vizier. They were ordered accordingly to be thrown to the elephants, which had been taught to cut their victims to pieces. Their hooves were cased with sharp iron instruments, and the extremities of these were like knives. On such occasions, the elephant driver rode upon them, and when a man was thrown to them, they would wrap the trunk about him and toss him up, then take him with the teeth and throw him between their forefeet upon the breast, and do just as the driver should bid them, and according to the orders of the emperor. If the order was to cut him to pieces, the elephant would do so with his irons, and then throw the pieces among the assembled multitude. But if the order was to leave him, he would be left lying before the emperor until the skin should be taken off, and stuffed with hay, whilst the flesh is given to the dogs." Battuta also noted the emperor in charge of the barbarous show seemed to take great pleasure in the brutality of the proceedings. It would also seem that the elephants were quite picky about what they ate, as we learned that a shika, who having betrayed an emperor was overcome and his flesh was roasted with some rice and thrown to the elephants to be devoured, but they refused to eat it. War elephants. Keeping pachyderms fed and well looked after was no easy task. The Pushyabhuti Emperor Harsha, who ruled northern India in the 7th century, had a very similar army to that of the Gupta Empire. Harsha received war elephants as gifts from his subjects or by seizing them from the armies that he defeated. The Sanskrit poet Bana recorded details of the war elephant's diet when he wrote that each one consumed a massive 600 pounds of food every day, consisting of sugarcanes and mangoes. The Western Empire of Chalukya was home to the Koala dynasty. In the 11th and 12th centuries, they had many war elephants that carried fighting towers on their backs, which were filled with bowmen who shot long-range arrows during battle. The Pala Empire, which was founded in eastern India in the late 8th century, was infamous for leading its vast elephant corps into combat. Whereas the Persian Empire of Ghaznavid was one of the first Muslim dynasties to use war elephants in warfare and include them in their tactical battle planning. They captured hundreds of the animals. Sources listed 350 taken from Kanauj, 409 from Mahaban, and 580 from Rajaganda. The Iranian statesman Utbi recorded that an exhibition to Thanissar in northern India was undertaken especially because the ruler wanted a special breed of Sri Lankan elephant thought to be exceptional in warfare. And the great Mughal Emperor Akbar had a stable of 32,000 elephants. In the 17th century, Jahangir had increased this number to 113,000, 12,000 in active service, 1,000 to supply their food, and 100,000 to carry courtiers and officials along with their luggage. The Mongol Empire invaded India several times during the 13th and 14th centuries. As the Mongols progressed with their campaign, they reached the outskirts of Delhi. The Sultanate led an offensive against them that resulted in several serious defeats for the Mongol army. By 1305, Sultan Alauddin Khalji had successfully fended off the invasions and with his 30,000 strong cavalry defeated them at the Battle of Amroha. Because the officials of the Delhi Sultanate saw the war with the Mongols as one of the Sultan's priorities, he was left with no other choice than to make an example of the prisoners. So many Mongols were taken captive, and according to the legend, Siri Fort was named because its foundations were built on the severed heads of 8,000 Mongol prisoners. In Hindustani, Sir means head. Those whose heads didn't end up being used as building blocks were crushed by elephants when a lord turned their deaths into a gruesome display of public entertainment. This was not just to deter any other enemies who fancied a chance at invading India, but it was also about controlling his own people through fear. Just after the medieval period, pachyderms were used in the southeastern countries of Burma, Siam, and Brunei. They were trained to toss men up into the air before trampling them to their death. The Scottish captain and privateer Alexander Hamilton provided an account in the 1560s of an execution in what is now modern-day Thailand. For treason and murder, the elephant is the executioner. The condemned person is made fast to a stake driven into the ground for the purpose, and the elephant is brought to view him, goes twice or thrice round him, and when the elephant's keeper speaks to the monstrous executioner, he twines his trunk round the person and stake, and pulling the stake from the ground with great violence, tosses the man and the stake into the air, and in coming down, receives him on his teeth, and making him off again, puts one of his 4 feet on the carcass and squeezes it flat. During the Mughal era, ruler Shah Jahan had an elephant garden where he ordered a criminal military commander to be, quote, taken and there to be executed by an elephant, which is reckoned to be a shameful and terrible death. At that time it was a common mode of execution to have an offender trampled underfoot by an elephant. Execution by elephant was used in South and Southeast Asia for more than 4,000 years. As the British Empire continued to expand and grow in power, the practice of Gunga Rao eventually died out in areas where it had once been common. Thank you for watching this episode of Medieval Madness. I'll see you next week for another one. Cheers.